I knew something was off the second I saw the janitor flinch when I said good morning. We'd done that same awkward nod dance for 9 years, him with the mop, me with the overstuffed accordion file. But that day, he looked at me like I was already a ghost. Like someone told him the compliance lady had an expiration date, and it was today. I walked the long beige hallway like I always did. Same stained carpet tiles, same flickering overhead light near the copy room that no one ever fixed because facilities is backlogged. Same limp little plant outside legal's door with its one surviving leaf, doing its best to photosynthesize through late capitalism. I dropped off the updated disclosure log, signed the audit trail sheet, and sat down at my desk, gray cubicle, double monitor, mechanical keyboard, because the soft ones lag too much when I'm cross-referencing codes. Nothing was glamorous. Nothing ever had been, but I found peace in it. Precision was my prayer. I wasn't one of those slide deck acrobats who pandered to clients with disruptive innovation buzzwords. I wrote policy. I audited workflow chains. I tracked metadata trails on high-risk filings and made sure we never, ever missed a compliance deadline. If someone handed me a crisis, I'd color code the disaster and file it in triplicate before lunch. I didn't need applause. Hell, most days I didn't even get eye contact. But I knew what I was. I was the quiet edge of the knife that kept this rickety company from bleeding out in a federal courtroom. If you're into stories like this, real ones, where the revenge isn't some loud tantrum but a cold, legal sucker punch, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. 90% of y'all listen without subscribing, and I get it, commitment's scary, but it really helps the team stay caffeinated and crank out more chaos. And if you give it a like, we'll pretend our office plants are thriving. Deal? Anyway, that morning I had 3 open cases on my desk. One whistleblower file involving a suspicious vendor renewal. One internal discrepancy between projected and actual assets held, just small enough to fly under most radars. One audit flag I'd been tracking for 6 months that nobody else seemed to think mattered. But it did. I knew it did. I could smell rot through the spreadsheets. I logged in, checked the compliance mailbox, 37 unread, all from the East Coast offices, and spent the next 2 hours sipping lukewarm black coffee while writing up a report that would eventually be summarized, misquoted, and ignored in a board meeting. That was the rhythm. That was the world. Predictable as hell. Until it wasn't. At 10:43 a.m., my phone buzzed. It wasn't a call. It was a meeting invite. Performance Alignment Discussion Office 14B with Derek B. No subject line, no context. Just one of those slap-you-in-the-face calendar pings that smells like HR cooked it in a microwave and handed it to you still steaming. Derek, my boss. The guy who used synergy as a threat and once asked me what FCPA stood for during a client dinner. He'd been promoted 6 months ago and had spent most of that time trying to streamline overhead. Translation: fire people who didn't make slides flashy enough for his LinkedIn screenshots. I clicked accept, got up, and smoothed my skirt out of reflex. On the way to Office 14B, I passed 3 departments I'd kept legally afloat during investigations no one even knew happened. Past people who didn't look up, who never did, because I was the wallpaper. Beige, quiet, dependable, until I wasn't. I opened the door to 14B and stepped inside. Derek didn't even pretend to stand up. He gestured toward the chair across from him like he was handing scraps to a dog. His tie was loose, his laptop open, a legal pad sitting beside it like he'd scribbled a few talking points during his morning bowel movement. "You probably know why you're here," he said. I did, but I let him monologue anyway. "I'll keep this short," Derek said, like he was doing me a favor. He didn't look up from his legal pad, just kept twirling a Montblanc pen like it made him smarter. "We're making structural adjustments. Streamlining non-revenue roles. You're being let go, effective today." I blinked, that was it. No review, no warning. No thank you for your decade of silent, airtight labor that kept our asses out of jail. Just streamlining. Like my job was a back-fat roll on the corporate waistline. He finally looked up when I didn't respond. Smirked. "Look, I know your title sounds impressive. All that senior regulatory liaison and compliance oversight stuff?" He actually did air quotes. "But let's be honest, it's mostly clerical, right?" Clerical. I stared at him. Not in disbelief, no. I'd seen the writing on the wall the second he tried to push through that vendor renewal without a second reviewer last month. But it still hit like a gut punch dipped in battery acid. "Derek," I said, voice calm, "do you even know what I do?" He leaned back like I was proving his point. "Exactly, that's part of the problem. You're smart, you work hard, but the role is opaque, not measurable, not scalable." "Not scalable," I repeated like I was taste testing the phrase. "Interesting. Did legal sign off on this termination?" "HR's aware," he said quickly. "This isn't personal, it's just business. You'll get the standard package, 2 month severance, COBRA, and all that." I could see it now, the HR goblin crouching behind the scenes, avoiding eye contact, already printing the exit documents with the wrong middle initial. They always messed that up. "Take the rest of the day to gather your things," Derek added. "IT will deactivate your credentials by 3 p.m. He stood up, already dismissing me from his brain, the way you swipe a push notification. Then, like he just remembered something that amused him, he added, "I always thought your title was a bit inflated anyway." But hey, it looked good on paper. Inflated, I nodded once, slowly. Because here's the thing about inflated titles in corporate America. Sometimes they're ego flab, and sometimes they're loaded weapons pointed directly at liability. Mine wasn't decorative. It was regulatory, legally binding. My name was on documents Derek didn't even know existed. My signature was part of a web of federal touchpoints, SOX, FCPA, SEC correspondence threads. I wasn't just some glorified secretary with a penchant for bullet points. I was the reason our last 2 quarterly reviews didn't result in federal subpoenas. But I didn't say any of that. I didn't throw the binder of flagged transactions on his desk or call him out on the 2 emails he BCC'd to procurement that would make a forensic auditor drool. Instead, I looked him dead in the eye and said, understood, because I didn't need to argue. I didn't need to beg. I didn't need to rage. I just needed to follow protocol. My protocol, the one I wrote. I walked out of office 14B, back through the maze of cubicles, past the woman in sales who once sent a confidential client file through her personal Gmail, past the guy in marketing who thought VPNs were optional, past the intern who'd asked me last week if HIPAA applied to car insurance. None of them looked up, but I wasn't invisible anymore. I was radioactive. My badge still worked. That was their first mistake. I tapped it against the reader, half expecting an error beep. But the light blinked green and the glass door slid open like it was just another Tuesday. No escort. No sad HR chaperone pretending they cared. Just me, a silent office full of humming fluorescent lights, and a checklist I'd written 5 years ago titled Compliance Officer Termination Protocol Voluntary or Involuntary. It wasn't dramatic. There was no cinematic music swelling in the background, no thunder rumbling in the distance. Just a keyboard, a familiar login screen, and the dull, rhythmic tapping of my fingers like Morse code for vengeance. First item, archive all locally stored compliance logs. Second, document all unresolved high-risk cases. Third, inventory all pending disclosures, incident reviews, audit trails. Fourth, forward outstanding regulatory matters to proper federal bodies. Simple, boring, even, but line 4 was the wrecking ball. See, it wasn't just about sending some files, it was about the who. My role, that inflated title Derek mocked, came with direct relationships. SEC, FINRA, PKOB, DOJ for the merger case we quietly killed last March. My name wasn't just on emails, it was on Form 1662 filings, on digital chain of custody receipts. I wasn't a clerk, I was the contact of record. So when I opened the secure compliance directory and started dragging folders into my encrypted mail queue, I wasn't being petty. I was being precise. Case 4582B, flagged vendor inconsistencies tied to expense reports Derek personally signed. Case 4799C, internal IT audit noting a suspicious volume of wiped drives 2 days before a quarterly close. Case 4811Z, a whistleblower report I'd been nurturing for months, cross-referenced with timestamps, invoices, Slack messages, and one very stupid selfie someone took in the warehouse with sensitive material in the background. Each folder had its own integrity hash, proof of access, and a digital trail leading straight to the executive suite. Some had been closed by Derek with the kind of cursory email a freshman would use to end a group project. I reopened them, flagged them, attached a clean summary note for each one. Then came the addresses. You don't send these kinds of things to info at inboxes. No, you send them to names, real ones. The people I'd spent 10 years shaking hands with at annual oversight briefings, nodding silently across rectangular hotel ballroom tables covered in stale bagels and federal coffee. I knew them, they knew me. And the moment those files landed in their inboxes, no Derek too, I added a short note at the top of the master file. Per section 6.4.3 of our internal regulatory closure policy, the following unresolved cases are hereby escalated upon personnel change. All documentation attached is final, verified, and was archived prior to credential deactivation. Respectfully, name. Then I hit send. The files took a moment to queue. I watched the progress bar creep forward, 22%, 47%, 83%, until each package was sent, logged, and archived in my personal compliance exit report. I uploaded the report to the SharePoint, timestamped it, and marked it final in the header. Then I deleted all my local temp files, cleared the cache, logged out. It was done. No theatrics, no public meltdowns, no email CC storms, just a quiet little digital avalanche. Loosed from the desk of the woman, they didn't bother to walk out. My computer screen faded to the lock screen. My reflection looked back at me from the black glass. Calm, methodical, almost serene. That was the moment I knew I hadn't overreacted. I had underplayed it, by a mile. That night, I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine that tasted like battery acid and stared at the ceiling like it might blink first. You'd think vengeance, real, federal-grade vengeance, would feel cleaner, cinematic, maybe like I'd pulled off a heist in stilettos. But no, it felt like I had a concrete block parked on my chest and a 1,000-yard stare I couldn't shake. Was it too much? Had I gone too far? I mean, sure, everything I sent was factual. Documented, verified. There wasn't a single exaggerated sentence or out-of-context screenshot in the whole pile. But there's a difference between following protocol and activating a slow-motion legal guillotine. I wasn't blind to that. The whole apartment felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that hums like a held breath. My cat Beans sat on the windowsill judging me with the same blank expression he used for everything from thunderstorms to spilled kibble. His tail twitched once, like he was processing a moral dilemma. Then he curled back into a loaf and went to sleep. I wish I could have done the same. Instead, I walked to the kitchen, opened the fridge, closed it again, opened the freezer, considered vodka, opted for leftover pad thai and a granola bar, sat back down, checked my phone, no texts, no calls, no sirens in the distance, no breaking news alerts. Maybe that's what messed with my head the most. Nothing happened. I just fired off enough legal tinder to light a bonfire under half the C-suite, and the world still turned like I'd sent a weather report. Was I naive to think the regulators would move fast? Or worse, had I misread the whole thing? What if no one cared? Maybe Derek was right. Maybe my job was clerical. Maybe all I did was flood some poor intern's inbox with a bunch of flagged spreadsheets they'd archive under low priority and forget by Monday. That was the thought that made my stomach lurch. Not that I'd blown up my career, that it wouldn't even matter. I curled up on the couch in an old hoodie I stole from my ex, flipped on some mindless reality show, and tried to lose myself in the chaotic lives of people whose biggest concern was who kissed who in a hot tub, but my brain kept rewinding. Back to the vendor logs, the audit trails, Derek's smug little smirk. The moment his pen stopped spinning and his voice dripped condescension like motor oil. No, it had to matter. Even if they buried the evidence, even if the regulators shrugged and moved on, even if nothing came of it, at least it wouldn't be my silence that let them get away with it. I could live with being ignored. I couldn't live with being complicit. Still, I didn't sleep much. I lay in bed with my phone on the nightstand, screen down, resisting the urge to check my email every 15 minutes like some desperate ex waiting for maybe. At 2:17 a.m., I cracked, opened the inbox, refreshed it. Nothing. No reply from the SEC liaison. No read receipt from DOJ. No bounce-backs either. Just void. I finally fell asleep sometime after 4 a.m., still dressed, still replaying old emails in my head like I could will them into action. I dreamed about office carpet catching fire, and nobody noticing until the sprinklers drenched the whole building in black water. When I woke up, my phone had one new message. It wasn't from a regulator, it was from my old coworker Rachel. One line, "Are you watching the news?" My phone buzzed again before I could even rub the sleep out of my eyes. "Rachel, something's happening. Men in suits are here." Rachel, not HR, not clients. I think they're from the government. I sat up so fast I knocked over the half-empty wine glass from the night before. It rolled off the nightstand, hit the floor, and miraculously didn't shatter. Just wobbled like it was drunk too. I blinked at the screen. My heart didn't know whether to race or stop entirely. Men in suits, it could have been anything. A client audit, insurance review, some executive power lunch. But it wasn't. I knew it wasn't. I grabbed my laptop off the coffee table, flung it open like a defibrillator, and went straight to every local business feed and finance Twitter account I followed. SEC monitoring bot, quiet. DOJ press release page, nothing posted yet. The regional office newswire, still cycling through last night's headlines about interest rates and someone's dumb fintech podcast launch. I typed in the company name, hit search, refreshed, nothing. I stared at the blank screen, frustrated at the silence. Then I remembered they wouldn't broadcast this. Not yet. When the feds move, they move quiet. Big dogs don't announce they're on your porch until your Ring doorbell feed's already been subpoenaed. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could text Rachel, ask for more, but I didn't want to spook her. She still worked there. If this was what I thought it was, she'd be better off playing dumb. Instead, I sat there in my hoodie, hair still half matted from restless sleep, and watched the digital world like a hawk with a caffeine addiction and a grudge. 8:22 a.m. Another text. Rachel, they showed badges. Real ones, said they're here for records access. 8:24 a.m. Rachel, Derek's not in yet. Our director looks like she's gonna throw up. 8:28 a.m. Rachel, they asked for the compliance archive, your archive. I exhaled slowly like I'd been holding my breath for 10 years, so it wasn't too much. It wasn't ignored. It wasn't filed and forgotten. They saw it. They acted. And now they were inside. I opened the secure backup of my files, just to confirm everything I sent. My stomach buzzed with adrenaline and dread as I skimmed through the folder names. Vendor bribes final audit trail, missing logs, SEC Q4 correspondence, whistleblower report, redacted. I didn't write these like someone hoping to catch attention. I wrote them like someone expecting a courtroom. Every word, every date, every attachment, intentional. Rachel texted again. Rachel, they're heading to legal now. They've got a list. I think it's your list. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My hands were shaking, not fear, not exactly. More like my nervous system finally realized what was happening. This was the moment between the match strike and the fire. The air before the explosion. I opened a blank browser tab and started refreshing local forums, financial chatter sites, subreddits. Nothing yet. It hadn't hit public yet, but it would. The fuse was lit, and Derek, he hadn't even walked into the building yet. I pictured his smug little half smile as he sipped his overpriced oat milk latte, probably practicing some smug speech about employee resilience for the next quarterly meeting. He had no idea. The weight that was about to hit him wasn't a pink slip or an awkward HR chat. It was a warrant, with his name on it, stamped, sealed, legal. My heartbeat wasn't even fast anymore, just steady, focused, like the moment right before a storm breaks where the wind stills and the trees go quiet and everything holds its breath. Let it come, I was ready. By 9:03 a.m., the office had gone full whisper mode. Not Slack messages, not emails, actual whispers, that hushed, anxious hum that only happens when something real is going down, something outside the bounds of office politics or passive-aggressive calendar invites. I wasn't there. Didn't need to be. My phone lit up like a Christmas tree with messages that all said the same thing in slightly different fonts of panic. They're in the lobby. Security just took a stack of papers from a guy in a dark blue suit. He had a badge, like real badge, not company ID. I think it said DOJ. Rachel says one of them has a duffel bag. Why do they have a duffel bag? Because they're about to start bagging evidence, sweetheart. That's why. I pictured the office I knew too well, the soft buzz of fluorescent lights, the smell of burnt coffee, the sound of the printer that always jammed when you were already late. Now layered with something new, boots on carpet, silence in the break room, the screech of plastic security lanyards being pulled a little tighter by suddenly sweating executives. And Derek, he had finally arrived. According to Rachel, he walked through the glass doors at 9:11 a.m. and stopped mid-step when he saw the men in suits talking to the front desk. Of course, he tried to play it cool. He adjusted his collar, smiled his political smile, walked right up and asked, "What's going on, gentlemen? Can I help you?" The lead agent didn't even flinch, just flipped a page in the packet and said, "We're here to execute a federal data collection order. Please step aside." Derek's smile stayed on his face, but it slid off his eyes like butter on a hot skillet. He glanced at security, who shrugged. Then at the receptionist, who was already texting under the desk like her life depended on it. "It's routine, folks," Derek said loud enough for the waiting area to hear. "Just some procedural stuff. Happens all the time when you work in regulated spaces." Routine. Sure, Derek. Just like a root canal with a chainsaw is routine. Rachel texted me again. This time not from her phone, from her computer, a screenshot. It showed Derek standing stiffly near the elevators while two agents walked past him into the elevator, one carrying a black evidence bag, the other flipping through a printed list. I zoomed in. Line 7, retrieve executive device, Derek B, Office 14B, laptop plus local storage drives. They weren't here to audit. They weren't here to ask questions. They were here to take things. And every agent in that elevator was walking on a breadcrumb trail I'd left for them with surgical precision. The same man who said my job was clerical now stood helpless as strangers rifled through his kingdom, looking for skeletons in file folders and metadata strings. Rachel said he tried again, followed them toward legal, said, "Can we at least have someone from internal counsel present? There's protocol for this." Lead agent apparently turned, showed a second badge, this one from the Department of Justice, and said, "Sir, your internal counsel is named in the warrant." Derek stopped walking. Rachel's message had no LOL, no emojis, no OMG, just a new sentence. "He's turning gray. I mean literally gray." My living room felt like a cathedral. Not a celebration, not gloating, just silence so dense it felt sacred. I didn't smile, didn't cheer. I just exhaled, long and steady. The machine I'd been a cog in for 10 years was finally grinding to a halt, and the man who greased it with arrogance and shortcuts, he was standing at the center of the wreckage, realizing too late that he was not untouchable. He was evidence. Office 14B. Same room where he'd fired me. Same chair he didn't offer me. Same smug, lean-back posture I'd mentally stapled to every one of his condescending emails. That room now belonged to the Department of Justice. According to Rachel, it all happened in less than 3 minutes. The agents didn't knock, they didn't wait. They strode in like they'd paid rent on the place, flashing a warrant that might as well have been written in fire. Derek's assistant, Megan, bless her 20-something heart, looked up from her phone and froze mid-scroll. Her face went sheet white. She didn't even ask what was going on, she just stood. Slowly, like the office itself had become radioactive. "Mr. B," she started, but one of the agents held up a hand. "We're here for specific assets. Do not touch the workstation." Rachel, watching from down the hall, said. Derek's voice came out tinny like a car alarm losing battery. "I don't understand. What's this about?" One of the agents pulled a stapled packet from a black case, opened it to page 1, and held it at eye level. "This is a federal warrant. You are named. You are not under arrest at this time, but you are to remain in the building until further notice." He didn't blink, didn't speak. Just stared at the paper like it was in hieroglyphics, like maybe if he squinted hard enough he could make the words say something else, something less apocalyptic. Then they started unplugging things. The laptop, still warm from his fingers, powered down as they slid it into an anti-static sleeve. His dual monitors followed. External hard drive, yanked, sealed, tagged. Megan moved to step forward and was immediately told to sit back down. Rachel said she could hear the zip of plastic evidence bags from 20 feet away. I sat at home watching it unfold through her texts like I was tuning into a live broadcast of my own funeral, but in reverse. This wasn't the end of me. This was the exhumation of him, and it was happening fast, faster than I expected. I thought there'd be delay, bureaucracy, some drawn-out dance of red tape. But no, the files I'd sent had been so airtight, so cross-referenced, so irrefutable that they didn't need to ask Derek anything. They already knew, and that was the part that shocked me. I didn't expect them to move this fast. I didn't expect him to fold this fast. Rachel said he tried to speak again, something about his attorney, something about compliance misinterpretation. But his voice cracked halfway through the sentence. He sat down hard like the chair had been pulled halfway out and he just gave up on balance. They took his phone. Not asked, took, bagged, tagged. Then came the best part. The agent closest to his desk picked up a yellow legal pad, flipped through the first few pages, and asked deadpan, "Did you author these notes on November 12 regarding the retroactive vendor payments?" Derek didn't answer. The agent didn't push. He just ripped the page out, folded it once, and added it to a growing folder labeled Exhibit C. That folder, I realized, probably had my email headers in it, my audit logs, my metadata trail, all filed under my final action as a compliance officer. Termination protocol, regulatory notification, executed. And now they were here, inside the dragon's mouth, pulling out the bones. I leaned back on my couch, still in sweatpants, still barefoot, and let out a breath I hadn't even known I was holding. A victorious breath, not some Hollywood cheer, just awe. It was actually happening. The same man who had smirked when he said my title was inflated, he was sitting in a gutted office, watching agents seal up his entire digital existence in padded envelopes and chain of custody boxes. He wasn't the boss anymore. He was an exhibit. By noon, it was no longer whispers. It was gospel. The kind of news that travels through elevator silences and Slack emojis, through nervous laughter in break rooms and vague calendar blocks titled Team Sync. Someone from legal cried in the parking garage. IT went dark, every monitor blue-screened, every login frozen like the whole system got stage fright. The company was under active federal investigation, and everybody knew. Not officially, of course. No email went out. No all-hands scheduled. You don't need a press release when agents and Navy windbreakers are carrying boxes out the front door marked evidence sealed. You don't need confirmation when half the executive suite's names disappear from the org chart overnight. Rachel's final text that day was a blurry photo, taken from the stairwell window overlooking the back lot. Derek, no jacket, no laptop bag, no swagger. Just a man in a crumpled dress shirt being escorted, not accompanied. Not flanked, escorted to an unmarked sedan by two agents who looked like they hadn't smiled since the Bush administration. His face had gone that sickly, waxy color you only see on overlit wedding cakes and people who have just realized they're legally screwed. He didn't look back at the building, didn't wave to anyone, just got in, silent, swallowed whole by the machine he thought he controlled. They didn't even let him pack his office. He had someone from facilities toss his personal items into a cardboard box, plant, mug, a sad little world's okayest manager plaque. Left the box at reception like a dry cleaning drop-off no one wanted to claim. And me? I didn't go back, didn't show up for a victory lap, didn't text I told you so to anyone. I just sat at home, coffee in hand, feet on the windowsill, watching a slow rain drizzle down the glass like the world itself was rinsing something off. No headlines broke that day. No big reveal. No viral tweet. Just consequence moving with quiet efficiency. They would try to spin it, of course. Compliance incident under review. Maybe some new interim leadership announcement. Maybe a LinkedIn post about organizational resilience in times of uncertainty. But the ones who mattered, they knew. They saw what silence looks like when it's sharpened into a weapon. Derek had mocked my title, called it inflated. Clerical, but that title? It came with legal weight, with federal recognition. With 10 years of clean record-keeping and relationships built in policy briefings and boring-as-hell oversight luncheons. That title had authority, reach, teeth, and now? That title was the reason his computer was in an evidence bag and his future was being reviewed under fluorescent lighting by someone who probably hadn't smiled since Enron. I didn't celebrate. There was nothing to celebrate. It wasn't revenge, it was gravity. And Derek had finally learned what it felt like to fall. Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit him.